Conarium is a single-player Lovecraftian horror game for the PC. The theme of it is fear of the unknown. I've spent 4 hours playing it from start to finish. The goals of the game are relatively simple and are presented to the player as soon as you log in. The first goal is to remember who you are and to find out where everyone in the Arctic base that you reside in is. The next goal presented to the player is to uncover the mysteries of the devices called Conariums, which you will find on your left hand and as a standalone device sitting in the middle of the meeting room when the player spawns in. The nature of these devices is revealed to the player throughout the entire story, but at first they are just seen as whirring light up toys almost. The ultimate goal, however, is to transcend from your mortal flesh and experience the multidimensional universe as normal humans cannot. The entire story for this game was based off of more or less a single H.P. Lovecraft story, with a similar goal in mind. On the designer side, however, the main goal was to deliver a horrifying and interesting experience to the player through cutscenes and interactive puzzles. Did they meet this goal? I would say so, due to the fact that the core of the game was mainly an interactive horror movie. There was not a lot of use for interaction aside from moving around to go to the next puzzle and solving said puzzles. When it came to the cutscenes and the actually horrifying experience, the player's movements and interaction were completely removed. As far as resources in this game go, there are really only two. Health is a very limited resource, and I'd say limited not because there is not a lot of health, but because it shows up in very limited circumstances. The only time it comes up is when you use an axe to attack a plant that releases a poisonous gas, a feature that was explained to the player before any of the plants were even introduced. What happens is you attack it around 3 or 4 times, and the player is then subsequently collapsed to the ground, and every time you hit the plant, a new poisonous gas appears, and the screen gets a little bit more yellow. The only other resource presented to the player is the charge level of crystal you get towards the later end of the game. The more charge you have in the crystal, the longer you can use it to push back those plants that cause you to die if you attack them with the axe. Once you run out of charge, however, you need to go back to an obelisk and charge it back up. There are 4 main mechanics in this game. They are interacting with objects that may or may not have a purpose in puzzles later on or for information, using an axe to break down sealed doors, and if you really want to, kill the plants, puzzle solving through keyboard input or mouse input. It was very much designed for console and controller input, however, and keyboard was an afterthought. And using a crystal to push back plants when it is charged up. The main experience of this game, as stated before, is that of an interactive cinematic experience, not so much a super playable and interactive game. As a result, the relationship between the mechanics and the experience itself overall feels very disjointed. The mechanics don't really have much of a say with the experience overall, since most of the horror and story comes from the cutscenes, not from the player actually solving the puzzles or interacting with the world around them. And finally, while this game was incredibly fun to play for the 4 hours I sunk into it, it has a fantastically polished environment that is ultimately let down by a terrible UI and the useless interactions with some objects throughout the world. The player can find objects in multiple locations and look at them, but in other locations, the same object won't be selectable at all. Plus, all of these objects that can be looked at, but not taken for the most part, feel completely out of place in the world itself. They don't serve a purpose, they don't give you clues, they're just there to look pretty and for you to rotate around in a 3D environment. I would rather just not be able to pick them up at all if they don't do anything, or if I can't interact with all of them in the world.